What's up, brother?
What's up, man?
Oh man, just getting after it. It's awful interesting these days and kind of what's happening in the market. I mean, I know you guys are rocking and rolling. But it's interesting, and I would love your take on this because it seems like the divide is really happening. Talking with Kinder a little bit earlier, and we were kind of going through the presentation back in 2014, EGS of 2014, and differentiate or die, where we kind of introduced the AFA character, and really the trusted advisor. And we were at that time saying that the true advisors, I think our percentage was like 9%, right? So 90,000 agents, roughly, kind of in that example. But the AFA agents, right, 68% of the industry, right, is in kind of that mess. And just interesting to start to see the divide of the rock star agents and the onesie twosies part-timers. I don't have a clue what's going on, fading away. What is your take on it? Just kind of seeing where kind of things are and things playing out, because I don't think that gap is going to close. I think it's going to continue to get wider and wider as we keep navigating.
I agree 100%. It's separating what is the wheat from the chaff. It's kind of what's going on. That gap that's happening, and as this market has been a challenging market, but a lot of people don't want to choose their hard.
Yeah.
But they want to function in excuses and and reasons or whatever in the hell they want to say, just because that's where they're comfortable. And they're uncomfortable being uncomfortable with the lack of results versus saying, you know what, it's a season. I'm going to press in and take advantage of this, which that's what we've been preaching to our team, saying, as the majority of agents are going to sit on the sidelines and wait to see what happens, we've got to press through. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, then you might as well just go ahead and get a McDonald's application and go ahead and apply.
Are people just lazy, or is it they just don't know, or they just don't want to do hard?
I think it's a little bit of both, or all of it. There has been a shift in our culture, as a nation, in our society, and it's honestly it's across the globe. I was reading an article yesterday that said, wealthy families, the kids grow up, they don't get a choice of what sport they're going to play. They don't, they have to play, musical instruments. They start piano lessons. They take fencing. They take, they have to read books. Where everybody now, society is like, oh, well, what do you like to do? What do you really enjoy? When that's not life.
Mm-mm.
So we're training up the younger generation to come up to think that they have all these choices. They want to do all the things that are fun versus dealing with the pain and the redundancy of doing something, whether it's, playing piano. Of course, I got my piano here, but the redundancy of practice. And it's continuing to get worse. Because if you look at like the generation before us, they worked
hard. Everyone took pride in their work.
Yeah. And now it's like, okay, how can I do the least but get the most? And I think that mentality has really taken a place in, so like I said, society today across the globe. And the people that are going to come out at the end and actually be able to do something are the people that are not operating like that. They're going to say, you can have excuses or results and you can't have both. And I know that this sucks right now that I've got to go through this. I know that I got to double down on my lead gen activities. I've got to follow up with people longer. I've got to nurture them longer because that process in the sales process in real estate is taking longer. I don't want to do that right now because it's too difficult.
Right.
The reality is, because we're also an instant gratification society, we want it and we want it now. And then unfortunately, life isn't like Burger King. We don't get it our way.
Yeah.
So where that delay in the sales process, especially this year, has taken longer for a buyer to go. Inventory's been sitting a little bit longer pretty much across the country. So sellers are taking a little bit longer. And the majority of agents don't know how to navigate those waters.
No, and it is such that instant gratification time. And you look at the agents that got in, in the last 5 years, that instant gratification has been there, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously we're starting to see it gap back out, but how long, Jim, you been licensed?
Too long. I've been licensed since 2007, but I didn't really do anything until 2011.
Gotcha. So, I got connected with Kinder in October of '04, got licensed in January of '05. So walking into a market, it was 100 days, right? It was 90 to 100 days. I mean, our guarantee, we always base the days of the guaranteed sell based upon kind of what the market was, right? And I think when I started with Kinder in that time frame, it was 89 days, right? Your home sold, 89 days guaranteed, or I'll buy it. And pandemic, just everybody took the days off, right? Your home sold guaranteed, offer guaranteed, right? We're gonna, so it's just really, being able to see and understand that gratification. So for you, when you put your trainer, coach, leader hat on, right, with the team, how do you get them over the hump, and where do you focus the gratification, right? Like the daily instant gratification, knowing the paycheck is 90, 100 days away.
Well, and like in our market right now, we're over 5 months worth of inventory.
Yeah.
So, and it's, and I'm not a huge advocate or, person that believes there's a buyer's and seller's market. I believe there is the in between, like 5, 6, and 7. I call it a transitioning market because you're transitioning from one to the other, and it can kind of fluctuate. But the way that I keep them kind of tied into it is, we all know that logic makes you think and emotion makes you act. So what is that emotional thing? What's that pain for them? It may not be tangible to them to think, oh, well, if I don't do this today, when Q1 comes next year, my business is going to be really struggling. They're not going to feel that pain. Mm. So one of the things that we've started to do with the team is sit down with everybody and, just walk them through, a little bit of just an emotional exercise. Close your eyes and fast forward 5 years. What does it have to look like in 5 years for you to say that everything has been amazing, that I'm blown away with my life? Okay. Who are the people that you impacted? What's going on in your family? What's up with your kids? What kind of car are you driving? What kind of vacations do you go on? And then, okay, well, let's rewind it. Let's look at this next year, the end of next year. And we've all done these exercises. Mm-hmm. But what tends to happen is, us as leaders, when we do these things and we do it with our team, we take the notes and we put them away. But guess what we don't do? We don't revisit them. Mm-hmm. So we've started a daily check-in with all the sales guys, or everybody in sales, the whole sales team. What was your commitment for today? We already know what their commitment for today is because we know what they have to do activities-wise to hit that thing for them by the end of the year. What was your commitment? Did you hit it, yes or no? And if you didn't, then I have a conversation with them just saying, John, I hate that you missed it today, but what's that going to look like? What's the conversation going to look like with your kids in 3 months? Because the activities you did today don't support what you committed to.
Right.
And keeping them reminded of that emotional state.
Yeah.
And, just keeping it in front of them and present, and even some cheesy things. I'd have everybody on my team and tell them, say, go get a label maker, print out what your commitment is for this, for the end of the year. We just did this exercise and I'm like, print out whatever it is your commitment is for the end of the year, put it on the top of your laptop, like right here at the very top, put it on your rearview mirror in your car, print it off and put it on your bathroom mirror. So that way it's there naturally. You're naturally going to see it. Your eyes are going to graze past it a couple times a day. So it keeps it top of mind.
Yeah. It's the whole out of sight, out of mind. Right. And I think too, it's the other, key component, and we've got to understand this. And I know it's hard for some people, but we need to be reminded more than we need to be told. And so creating those reminders everywhere, is absolutely key. And, and I think it's shifted, and it used to be afraid, to hold people accountable because the fear of them leaving. Yet, how are you starting to see are the team members starting to crave that accountability more now when things are hard than before?
Interestingly enough, I believe they do. They're vocalizing a lot more. Even in one of our most recent team meetings, we were talking about, you've got to do the small things. Like we've all heard, small hinges swing big doors. Yeah. It's those small things that we have to do consistently. And if we don't do those consistently, then we're not going to have the thing. And at the end of our team meeting, Leanna and I came back and we both had multiple messages from people that were there saying, hey, here's what I'm committing to. Here's where I need help. this is what I want accountability to look like. Of course, like accountability for me and what it looks like for me. I mean, you know me, it gets kind of hateful. It's like, we're going to take your kids outside. And if you don't do this, your kids are going to fall off the back deck.
Yeah.
They're going to be hurt. You know, or they have to write a big check, or, you know, some of those fun things, but not everybody responds to that.
Right.
And, you know, and that's where, as leaders, we've got to know what's important to our people so we can articulate it back to what's important to them, and keeping it back on that emotional thing.
Yeah. And is it more of the self-selection that, you know, allowing them to select in, you know, hey, we're going to, you know, because what's crazy is that we buy it, right? We buy accountability, right? We buy coaches, we buy these things that will kind of show up and force us to show up and push us to get the results. So it is a form of what people pay for. But is it more so, hey, listen, you know, standard here is we do what we say, but there is a form of accountability. How do you want to, you know, I can, you know, ease on it, or I can, you know, hit the gas. So is it more of just a self-selection?
Yeah. Cause I mean, when I've tried to cram it down their throats, it doesn't really work out as well. But just like when I come in, I say, all right, John, this year you're going to sell 35 homes, blah, blah, blah. Cause that's what my model of, you're going to sell 35 homes. Well, maybe your goal is to sell 22.
Yeah.
And, you know, and am I going to keep that person that's going to be at 22, or am I going to force you out because I'm holding you to a standard that you have no buy-in on?
Yeah.
You know, and it's, I'm a huge fan of consequences, and, you know, it's life. But like Leanne and I say, you know, a standard without consequences is merely a suggestion.
Yeah. That's so good. Cause it is.
Yeah. Well, and it's really easy for us as business owners, no matter what business you're in, we say, this is what we're going to do. And then there's no price to pay. There's no teeth in it.
Right.
So we've had, and you've got to have the right teeth too, because what's the teeth that's going to, is it that, like, I've got a guy on my team that when he came on, he left a full-time job. He was making like 75 grand a year. And it was literally like the scene out of Wolf of Wall Street, where a dude walked up to Leonardo DiCaprio, said, show me you did this, and I'll quit my job today. That's literally what happened with him. And one of the most humble and genuine people I've ever met in my life. And when he said, okay, he's like, I have no other option. He's like, I quit my job. I've only got, you know, I've got my retirement savings that I'm going to burn through, but there's no other option, but this has to work. And I said, all right. I was like, so let's sit down. And we sat down. I said, all right, write a letter to your family that 6 months from now, 18 months from now, whenever. And it's you telling your family that you decided you wanted to go to the lake and go fishing, and you wanted to hang out and shoot the shit with people at the office, and you weren't committed to them as much as you were committed to all the other fun stuff that you wanted to do. And really got him in. It was a little bit of, you know, work. It had to kind of nudge him a little bit, but to get him to that emotional state of, God, this sucks, that pain. And I said, so here's what we're gonna do. Give me that letter, fold it up, put it in an envelope, wrote a note on it that said so-and-so's family, and I kept it in my desk. It's in my desk here at the house. And he knows that at any point in time, he doesn't press through when it's difficult. Or if I catch him screwing off, I'm calling his family. And I'm going to say, hey, we need to have a family meeting. We're going to come over to my house. We're going to cook out. And it's not going to be coming over to my house and cook out, and we're going to have a good time. So we sit down and we're going to tell your kids that you chose, that you didn't want to stand up and fight for them and fight for the legacy and your family and the people that you loved. You wanted to go hang out and screw off and play video games or whatever his thing is. And you made your choice. Now you need to share what choice you made. Yeah. There's no excuses. It's a choice. And, you know, little things like that. But I know what's important to him. And I mean, and you know me well enough. I'm not really a huge emotional. To the people in my world that are really close to me, my inner circle, my kids, I'm huge emotion. But in public life and in work, I'm not.
Yeah. Straight to the point.
Straight to the point, no bullshit. It's going to be, sometimes it's a little too direct, a little too harsh, even though it comes from a place of love and compassion for the people. So I knew that my system was broken of how, because I had been through this cycle several times where we walked somebody through this, and then I don't remember what it is. So I had to make sure that I had reminders to check in. I also had to make sure that I had, just like they have to have their commitment in front of them in multiple areas, I had to have their commitments in front of me. So that way I knew what was important to them at the point in time. So if I did have to hold them accountable, if I did have to call them out, I knew what I could bring up, because I couldn't call and say, well, you didn't make your calls today, you suck, go work at McDonald's, because they wouldn't receive that. But if I said, the standard of excellence that you gave me today wasn't excellence, and it wasn't that you gave it to me, it's that you're letting down your family, you're letting down your friends, you're letting down your dog, whatever it is, because that's what's important to them.
It's so good. Creating that emotional anchor to bring it back in. And I think, that's so true in this business. I mean, it's true with human beings. And, for getting back to this point too, where we're getting back into the days of price reductions and just things have to, just a little bit tougher conversations that have to be had. The biggest catapult for us on that was that emotional anchor with sellers. Right. Yeah. And, I always joke, right? Buyers and sellers have, selective amnesia once we get into the mix of it. Right. And the deals and offers are coming in, and it's like, hold on, like, a couple months ago, we talked about this. And so we got to the point to where like we were writing it down and almost having, them like, yeah, that's it right there. That's what it is, because you've got to have that to always bring them back to. I remember it might've been, it was either Priceline or Travel Advisor. One of the companies early on, and the founder was still, it was in the early on days, founder was still doing the hiring, and he got this, gentleman coming in and, kind of, what are your goals? Well, why do you want to work here? And, told him he wanted to make X amount of money, and he pushed him on it. He said, well, why do you want to make that? And he pushed on him a little bit more, and said, listen, my mom lives in another country. I'm trying to get her over here, and I want to buy her a home. She's never owned her own home before. I want her to buy it. And he said, that's it. He said, what I want you to do when you start is I want you to print out a picture of that home that you're going to buy your mom. And I want you to put it, on your wall next to, the cubicle where you're working. And he would come by, check in, and he would ask him, say, how close are we getting that house? How closer do we get into that house? Right. So he made it visual, but he brought the emotion and he anchored it to him. And man, I mean, you're so spot on. I think that's the only way to get people to really take action and move through the hard when they don't want to.
Well, and I agree 100%. Well, and here's the thing. We know in the sales skill, just like the emotion that I shared, the story that I shared at kitchen table about my client, and how when we're dealing with clients, part of building that rapport and that relationship to where they trust us is understanding what's important to them and understanding the emotional component. We do it every day with our clients, but yet a lot of us as team leaders don't do it with the people that are on our team. And how are they supposed to trust us if we don't have that emotional connection? If we don't understand what's important to them, if we haven't, gotten to truly understand why, because we do it, like I said, we do it every single day. Got a seller that, doesn't want to adjust their pricing schedule to be able to get their home sold, but because they're thinking they don't want to leave any money on the table, but they really want to be with their, their grandchildren in another state. Okay, so what do we talk about? We don't talk about the pricing. We talk about, let's get you there. Let's facilitate this. The way that we're going to facilitate this is by we have to adjust, or we need to do this or that around the house. But then when it comes to our team and our staff, we tend to not have that same emotional component. And I don't know why there's such a disconnect, because it's something that we do every day. It honestly becomes natural at some point, but with our people in our organization, we tend to not.
Do we just because just time we're around them too much proximity? I mean, do we constantly do that with our kids? I'm just thinking as you're kind of going through there, why do we lax on that behavior and that reminder factor?
I think it is proximity, and it's not proximity that they're too close, but it's the frustration of that proximity. At least for myself, where I become frustrated that they're not reaching their full potential, or I get frustrated they're not showing up to the things that we're trying to pour into them, or that they're, disengaging from us. And instead of going back and being like, look, here's what we got to do, and taking it back to that thing, we tend to just say, forget it, and move on. because the time and energy when somebody is at that proximity is a lot more demanding than somebody that you can pick up the phone and call to or go by their house for an hour and talk to them. It's not like you're seeing them every single day. So I think it's probably a combination of the proximity and the time.
Do you think it's also just the knowledge, things that we take, like, man, this should be common sense. Like, they just haven't quite learned it yet. Maybe they haven't heard the message. They haven't got enough reps in with it yet. I mean, I catch myself, I've caught myself in the past and stuff with the kids. Right. And I'm like, I mean, the dude's 9 years old. Like, come on. I mean, he's not, he hasn't been, Navy SEAL training yet. Like, it's like, okay, give a little bit of grace here, a little bit of that. Is that the empathy? Is that the emotional growth for us as leaders is to catch ourselves a little bit quicker, put ourselves in their shoes?
Probably so. Is when I think that in the growth of my business over the years, to me, it was mostly about time and coming to the realization, and it says it in the Bible, we've heard it 1,000 times, but a prophet's not honored at home. Especially, and why is that? Why is a prophet not honored at home? Because of what? Proximity. Because, like, I can speak here in my marketplace and might have a couple people show up. Hopefully my team will show up, but I could go speak somewhere else in another area of the country and people will show up. Same thing. You could speak at home and some people might want to listen, but you go somewhere else, you could have a sold out audience and they're taking notes of everything that you're saying, because it can be the same thing that the person that's there, that's hosting the event says every single day, but we all know that a prophet's not honored at home. And the only reason that I've been able to identify why that would be is because of that proximity.
That's so true. I was laughing as you were talking, because I remember there were a couple occasions, right? Middle of team meetings, Reese rolls into town. He's living in DFW. We're in Lawton. I mean, it's a 3-hour drive. He pops in and, like, we just wind him up and let him go. And he's just regurgitating everything that we've taught him. And the same thing we teach the team, yet they're sitting there taking notes, and it's like the greatest thing they've ever heard. And that was the aha moment for me. I just remember walking out of that meeting, just laughing, going like, holy smokes. Like, this is what we've been training on for the last 6 weeks. And, like, no light bulbs are going off. This dude comes in for 15 minutes, says the exact same thing we've been saying for 6 weeks. And it's the greatest thing ever. So yeah.
And that's because I think that when proximity is a factor, people also see us, because being honest, I'm not on 100% every single day. There might be a day that I'm frustrated and they'll just see the difference in my demeanor, or maybe they'll hear me outside on a phone call. They know the struggles that I have, with my kids or with my friends or whatever, all that personal stuff that kind of comes, even though we don't share it, they're close enough that they can sense some of those things. And because of that, maybe that's what affects their judgment.
Does that cause any, is there any, like, downside ripple effect of that? I mean, Leanne and I have had conversations about that, right? And certain things kind of start to wean, and she's like, did you, like, were you too vulnerable, right, on certain things, to where did their perception changed? And I posted it this morning. I was in the sauna, and I forget, Forcella was on some rant about something, and it was around, perception, and that perception is reality, right? Doesn't mean it's real, but whatever's perceived is that way. And is that sometimes, those that are the closest to us get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that kind of skews the judgment, skews their perception a little?
I believe so. Kind of like at a kitchen table, you walked us through that exercise of scoring the 6 questions or whatever it was, where we score the people that are closest to us, and we're all like, oh shit, we need new people in our inner circle. And the reality is that we might not be as open with the people that are around us, but the people that have that proximity or the access to us.
Yeah.
they still or they can also hear what kinds of going on from somebody else. There's no telling. But it's like there's a reason why Leanne and I like to work from home.
Yeah.
And I had a coach several years ago, and he told me, he said, it was actually Mike Gerbic. And Mike said, Jim, he's like, because I was like, I'm moving to Puerto Rico. I'm gonna come down there and hang out with all of my buddies and hang out. It's like, I'll have to have a place to stay off the couch surf for a while, but nonetheless. And when we were talking, he said, you need to run your business like you're 6 hours away. Just like if I lived in Myrtle Beach, or I lived down in Miami or somewhere else, or just 6 hours away, because that way, that proximity of me being there every day starts to become a separation, not in a negative way. But then when I am present, it's the time's valued, if you will.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it allowed me to protect my time and Leanne to protect her time, because I'm sure you've heard us talk about, hey, you got a minute? Hey, I got this question. Hey, you got a minute? And I'm like, come on.
But it allows them to be dependent upon you. And that's the worst, right? Is you can't build anything. You can't build an organization if they can't think or be resourceful for themselves. And when you're constantly there, they just default to you. One, they want to, it's easy.
It's close.
Yeah. It is. It's, it really is one of those, but it's an art, right? I mean, there is a little bit of science, but there's a lot of art to it, because there's times that you want to be there, especially struggling times, tough times that we all go through, to be able to be there to kind of push on them a little bit, create that presence. But you can also create that energy, which is what you've done remarkably well, is just jumping in and leading by example. And that becomes contagious as well.
Yep. Well, the energy is going to do one of two things. It's either going to bring them in and they're going to become contagious, or the energy is going to burn them out. Because if I go out here to my backyard and I start a fire and I have wood in my fire, and if I keep that energy going and I just put some other stuff around it, eventually that energy, that's either going to become part of the fire and be able to burn with it, or it's just a spark's going to fly over and just start taking over and just burning everything else as long as we let it go.
So what's the balance? How do you make it sustainable?
With trial and error.
Yeah. Yep. So for you, how have you found that energy to be sustainable?
So, I mean, for me, there's no other option. There's no other choice. So I have to show up. And when the team and the people, not just my team, but other people that I work with, when they know that, okay, well, Jim's back's up against the wall, he's going to come out fighting, and doesn't matter how hot the fire is, he's going to make it happen. And at the same time, no matter what they're going through, I'll jump in the ditch with them and help, as long as they will fight. If they'll fight and they'll push for it, then I'll get in with them. I'm gonna have to get in there and encourage them a little bit. But if they don't want it, then I realize too that at that point in time, I've got to release them and say, look, I can't carry everything for you. But usually what happens is when you get in and you become active in those seasons, then it does catch on, and the majority of them will listen. And then the ones that don't, they don't want to be around that energy. It's just like if I was walking around all day long and I was Debbie Downer, nobody would want to be around me. But just like, when we've been to St. Thomas, and of course, just sitting up there, but that energy becomes contagious.
Yeah.
But to somebody that's not comfortable in that energy, they're going to go hide.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be around. So it's too much for them. It's the same thing in the world with people that are in our world, in our organization, work for our companies, work with us. Sometimes that energy or that light's a little too bright.
Yeah. And what's your take on this too, right? Like, I think it's seasons. It's seasons of the market. It's seasons of their lives as well, right? That one was a big get for me. And, just because somebody burns out, they're not in the same season. That there's different things going on, right? Like, I mean, when you've got, I always say this to, building businesses and they've got kids, and I'm like, you got car seats, or are they a little bit older, or are they pretty much dependent? Are they pretty much out of the house? Are they driving around? Right? Because all of that is a different season
Yep.
to how we gas the business to what's sustainable.
100%. Well, and I myself am a believer in seasons.
Yeah.
Because it's, whatever you're going through, no matter how difficult it is, at the end of the day, it's a season. And at the same time, whatever else you're going through, no matter how great it is, it's a season. And I'm a firm believer that God brings people into our lives for seasons. Mm-hmm. Every person that comes our way, whether it's a friend, a spouse, a loved one, our kids, or just somebody we meet at the grocery store when we're checking out, they've come across our path during a season for us and for them. And sometimes we make the mistakes of thinking that somebody was supposed to be a momentary season. We try to talk ourselves and God into it, that it was a lifelong season. And he's like, no, It's not. It just takes you a long time to figure that junk out. And vice versa, people that should be lifers that are in the inner circle, we try to keep them over here versus saying, while I've got you in my world, regardless of how long that season is going to be, I'm going to pour into you. And I want to leave something inside of you that changes your life and impacts your life. And versus just because it's not all about work, it's not all about personal, but what kind of impact are we truly leaving on people? Because I mean, when I die, I don't want people to show up at my funeral and be like, well, Jim was a lot of fun. He enjoyed music and jumped around like a fool, and he sold a lot of real estate. Because that's not who I am. That's what I've done versus who I am and the impact that it's had to make people, break the bondage of a poverty mindset off of themselves, which then changed their kids' trajectory, had them think bigger. Just by being around that energy, they start thinking differently. And it's like, okay, whether you're here for 15 minutes or you're here for 15 years, what's the impact that I'm going to leave in your world? What's my responsibility to leave that impact to you? And that's the way that I kind of look at it. Because, I've had the negative connotation before where I've said, everybody leaves. Everybody's going to leave. And part of that was from the burnout of, running a team and going through those cycles of hire, fire, come back, fire everybody, start all over, keep on going. And that's that rat race. And that came from a point of frustration where I would say everybody leaves, but reality is they didn't necessarily leave. It was just that their season was over. And then I had to sit back and say, as a leader and as, a friend or as a husband or a spouse or whatever, what impact did I have in that person's life?
Yeah.
Was it positive or was it negative? If it's negative, then I need to go search out my heart to see, okay, what could I have done differently so I can grow so I don't do that again? Going all the way back to the person saying that they want to sell 22 homes and I'm trying to push them to sell 33, 35. We're not, like you said, we're not in the same season. We're not even in alignment. And all that does is it causes frustration with them. They become, disappointed in themselves. They feel like they're letting me down or letting the team down. When reality is I'm the one that's creating that disappointment.
How long did it take you to learn that?
There was a gentleman that was on our team. His name was Lyle. One of the most talented people I've ever met in my life when it came to, building rapport with people and objection handling and presenting the information, like not really a script master, but just freaking amazing and a people person. And that was the same situation for him. He came on board within his first 60 days. He had 6 under contract, like brand new, never been in sales. He had bartended back in the day. And this is back in 2018-ish, 2017, 18. So the market was still the market. It wasn't booming like crazy here. And, he came out the gate, bam, nailed it. And then he'll go through a lull. He actually, I think still today owns the record for the most number of closings in a single month. He had 12, but then he would have 9 months of nothing. And I became frustrated with him because I'm like, dude, I was like, don't you see how much potential you have? Don't you see what God's created you to be able to do to impact you make in other people's lives? But you got to have the funds to do it. Dear Lord Jesus, get off your ass and do something. And he'd be like, okay. It's like, I know you want to move out of your parents' basement because it's literally where he's living in his mid-30s. I'm like, don't you want to? You deserve better than this, but you got to go out and fight for it. And after 3 years, of me holding him to the fire hydrant, like literally like grabbing his mouth and holding it over to say, you're just good. He shared with me, he's like, man, he's like, I'm completely content doing like 20. He's like, yeah, I'd like to have my own place. He's like, but I don't really have to have my own place right now. I'm comfortable. There's not anything that's going on to be able to make that change. And I realized that as a leader that I had let him down because it wasn't what was important to Lyle. It wasn't what the commitments that Lyle made. They weren't his commitments. Whose were they?
They were yours.
They were mine. And then I had to sit back and say, shit, how many other people have I done the same thing to?
Yeah.
Because we and I say all the time, like, people will fight for their limitations more than I can fight for their greatness. And it had said, and during that season of my life, that was rhetoric. I would just say, people will fight for their limitations more than I can fight for their greatness. But what was I doing? I was pretty much reinforcing their limitations versus just saying, okay, well, you're comfortable at 20. All right, let's do 20. And then, all right, you're a little bit ahead of pace. Let's edge it up. No, it was like, we're going to be balls to the wall because I could see
all the time.
I could see how much potential you have, what you could really, truly accomplish. I could see so much potential in you, and I would fight for it. But at the end of the day, it wasn't the season for him. So, we literally had to have a conversation, and, he told me, he was like, man, I'm really struggling with depression. He's like, I love you guys. And he meant it. He's like, I love you guys. He's like, you guys are like family to me, and I'm not the person that I'm like, a lot of that when people say it, it's not really authentic and genuine, but he was 100% authentic and genuine. And he's like, I feel like I'm letting you guys down because I'm not reaching my potential and it's killing me. And because of that, I can't be here anymore. And I was like, wow. Number one, thank you for being honest. Number two, what could I have done differently during that 2.5 to 3 year season that he was with me that could have possibly changed some of that? Yeah. Now, did he leave our business? And he's still local. Heck, he's a craps dealer at the casino here in town. and he loves it because he was a short game person. It wasn't that long term nurture. No, that's where he got stuck. Just quick rapid sales. Did he leave changed because the environment he was in from that energy? Did that energy change his perception on a lot of things in a positive way? Yep. Did he start to believe in himself differently? Sure as hell did. But if I would have broken it down a lot less and met him where he was, then what could have happened?
Right. Yeah. And, sometimes that takes a little bit of time to get through as well. Right. And, just going deeper with them, asking more questions and, helping them find purpose. Because like you said, what I've seen is that when financial needs are met, right, they're not going to push through, right? I mean, they'll chew through the sheetrock to get the cheese when they're starving, but if they're good, they're good. And so I think for when we uncovered that, we were actually, the realization was we were kind of shifting and toying around with the salary-based model. And so we were just doing some, glance over the last 3 years with agents and income. And we uncovered that a couple of our top agents were within a couple $1,000 plus or minus every year. And we were like, what the heck is going on here? What is this? And it was until I think it was Daniel Pink's book, Drive. And he talked about it in there and he broke it down. He's like, listen, humans will only do what is required for financial needs to be met. Once that is there, if they don't have a higher purpose, they ain't doing nothing. They're not. And so for you as a leader, I mean, I think entrepreneurs, small business owners just wire different. But when you bring in team members, being able to pull that out of them is the magic sauce. If you can help them find purpose, and there's things that you talked about, right, earlier on, right? Why they do it, the vision, also setting up, accountability pieces, letters to your future self, letters to your kiddos. One of my favorite is, if you had a camera on you 24/7 and it streamed live to the people that you care about the most, right? Your kids and your spouse and your parents and your siblings and your best of friends, like, you knew that camera was on you, you would behave a lot differently. And I think that's just a great reminder on the accountability piece, but being able to pull that purpose, to me, is critical. Especially in this game right now where it feels like everything is hard, is you can't just be interested. I mean, you got to be committed and borderline obsessed to be able to navigate the way things are moving right now.
One of the things, just being completely, I'm an open book. Something probably too transparent to share, but I don't really care. So I was having a conversation with somebody because I'm most definitely a person that believes in abundance. That I'm like, all right, I believe that we can walk into some abundance, but we got to go out there and fight for it. And for the longest time, and you've probably heard me say this over the several years we've known each other, but I can live a great life off of X. I don't have to have 50X. I don't need to make millions of dollars a year because I live a great life off of this and do all my trips and spend time with the people and fund the future for the kids. We're perfectly fine. And the root of that, because I grew up in a single parent household. My mom worked 3 jobs. It was my mom and grandmother. My mom wasn't at most of my baseball games growing up, or she was at my piano recitals. Some she wasn't because she was working, and which is good because that also gave me there's no excuse to your situation. You have the power to change whatever environment that you're in. You just have to go out and fight for it. The downfall or the adverse side of that was, even though I'm not a poverty mindset person, and the thing that pisses me off the most in this world is when somebody starts talking victim language, victim mentality, or they start having a poverty mindset. It drives me crazy. But I was operating in a poverty mindset with myself. When it came to relations of, I don't need to live a great life off of what I mean. I don't need to have it because I knew what it was like to not need anything. And people say, well, don't you want to have this? Well, I might want it, but I don't need it. And I sat back and I said, okay, well, when do I perform the most and the best? When there's pressure.
Yeah.
And not just a little bit of pressure that's like, oh shit. It's bad. There were seasons in my life where I literally went back and I took every dime that I had. And I'm not saying for anybody to ever do this, but I'm like, okay, the only area that God ever told us to trust him in, it was in finances, or not trust him in, but to test him in was finances. So I was like, I'll take every dime that I have. I'm just going to sew it away. And then nobody was able to stand back and say, Jim was smart. He was able to dig himself out of this. They would say, this is just a complete miracle because Jim's an idiot. But I knew that I could trust him in that, and that it wasn't really testing him in it. But I was like, there's no other way that I can get out of this.
Yeah.
So I've got to press on. And even just, 3 years ago, Leanne and I were living in a townhome. We had a very small payment on it. It was like $1,000 a month. Nothing super special. We had bought it, put some money into it, worth about $500,000, but there was no pressure there. And I'm off at that season that I was in when we first, in the younger season of our relationship. It was like, okay, well, without having to have the pressure of that, we can take that extra money and we can go on more trips, and we can spend more quality time with the kids, and we can create more experiences and memories. But then I had to shift and say, well, wait a minute. This little mindset shift that I need to have, that's coming from a root that's way back here that I identified, has us not living in the abundance that I believe in, but I'm allowing us to live in lack because I've become complacent because it was too freaking easy. So I said, that's it. Kids want to be in a house in the neighborhood. We went out and I bought a big old house in a neighborhood and spent more money than I wanted to ever spend on a house. And now our payment is significantly more than it was. I needed a new car. Luckily, I paid cash for my car and for hers, but it's like, okay, that's going to limit what funds we have. So now we have to wait and say, okay, well, our debt service on the 40 pieces of real estate that we bought last year and our house and all this is $40,000 a month. I've got to get up off my butt and go out here and hustle and not be comfortable at $20,000 a month. I need to make $80,000 a month now to be able to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And to have a little bit extra. That pressure pushed me through to changing my environment that I was in and changing the decisions that I was making on a daily basis. And
it becomes a new normal for you too, as well, right? Because it's the whole thing, right? Once you're stretched, you can't go back. It's just impossible, right? And it's like, you know, me on the endurance side of things, right? Like, I've not ran more than a 5K, and it was a beer run 5Ks 9 years ago. Now I can get up on any weekend and go run 100 miles, but it's just like, but it's when you expand that, right? Like you just can't go back. And I think you and I are similar in a lot of ways. Like,
I don't run.
we have to manufacture pressure.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's like, because we just have to create the hard things for us to stay engaged in the thing, unless you're just obsessed about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if it's not a challenge, then okay. And we've all been through some crap in our lives, good, bad, and ugly. We've all been through trying times. But when I identify that setbacks, okay, the year that was probably one of the hardest years for myself personally in my life was also the year that I sold 176 homes. Not as a team, as Jim, out there slinging some appointments.
Yeah.
And it was because that pressure was there. I had to perform. I had to do something different. And it's like, okay, let's go. And there's not really any pressure that comes in, but so we have to, like you said, we have to manufacture. We have to find that pressure. Just like the simple thing of buying a house that was outside of my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
It created that financial pressure to where I'm like, okay, well, now I've got to do a little bit more. So, I mean, I guess we get off of this, I need to go and, buy some more houses. Like, hey kids, we bought a house. We bought a cabin and we bought a beach house this week, and you won't see Daddy for the next 6 years.
Yeah, I gotta go. I'll see you guys. Oh, that's awesome.
But it does what it does though is that pressure, and for most people they'll break under the pressure, but that pressure for myself, I find it invigorating.
Mm-hmm.
To where it's like that's a whole new energy that's there, and then when we put that pressure on ourselves, the people that are around us that see how we react and how we carry that weight and what happens and how, because nobody built a big world being comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if they have generational wealth, the generations that built that wealth, they were unfreaking comfortable.
Yeah.
The majority of the time.
Mm-hmm. You have to be okay with that level. Yep. And there's a lot of people that are not. They're just not built that way. They're not built for that amount of pressure. And that's okay, because it's not for everybody.
Yep.
At all. All right, Jim, I got to ask, man, what's where did the obsession with music and the piano come from?
So I don't know if you know this story about me. So it was, my grandfather died when I was in 4th grade. I think I was 9. And right before he had passed away, I mean, like my thing is I was going to be a Air Force pilot, blow stuff up, fly jets, everything's cool. And my grandmother and my mom put me in piano lessons. And we lived at about 30, 45 minutes from my grandmother. And it was just my mom and I hanging out at our little apartment that we had. Well, we didn't have a piano.
How come piano lessons?
Huh?
How come piano?
I wanted to play drums. And
right.
My mom said no, which I can understand. Why not? Even though I'm getting ready to buy a set of drums just so I can make loud noises. I don't know why it was piano. I also played alto sax for a hot minute and violin for a hot minute. It was different. That was just kind of after I was already playing piano. But we couldn't afford a piano. So I had nowhere to go to practice. So my piano teacher that I had back in the day, my very first piano teacher that I had, she made copies, or Xerox copies. She made copies of the piano keys. And I would sit on the stairs sit like this on the landing of our little duplex that we lived in, and I would tape the keys to the stairs. And I would have the music in front of me, and I'd say, okay, like playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, like very basic crap. It wasn't like anything super special. So then after my grandfather passed away, we moved in with my grandmother, and my grandmother went and got like some piano from a yard sale and brought it in. And I'm like, okay, I'll keep on playing. And she got me to a new teacher because we lived in a new city. And literally within a week of having the piano, the teacher was like, do you see what he's doing? And my grandmother was like, yeah, I see what he's doing. And like the first song that I sat back and really learned was back in the church circle, this guy named Dino Kartsanakis. He was like the Christian Liberace, like really flamboyant, but played like big chords and loud and flashy. And he played Chariots of Fire. And I saw him play Chariots of Fire. And I was like, I want to learn that song. So I went back to my grandmother's house, got back home and sat down, and I learned how to play Chariots of Fire. And I went and I bought the music for it, but I wasn't really necessarily playing. I started improvising on top of the music. And then my teacher was like, okay, she picked up that I would, I'd say, why don't you play that for me? And then fast forward through high school, my teacher that I had, she moved away. The number one teacher in all of the area, her name was Dr. Thomas. Miss Thomas had a 2-year waiting list. My grandmother called and said, hey, look, this is Jimmy Griffin's grandmother, and I was having lessons the same week. But Miss Thomas was a little bit of a butt. She wouldn't play it for me. She would make me play it because she had noticed that not only could I read music at a very high level at that season of my life, but I could also play by ear. I don't have perfect pitch, but I have relative pitch. So if I hear a song, I'm like, okay, to me, it's all math. As crazy as this is. If you are playing a 4 chord in the key of G, that you're playing a C major, there's only so many mathematical equations to where you can resolve that. And that's how my brain processed it. So, but that's kind of how it all started. And then at 15, I won an international piano competition. Actually had a full ride to the Juilliard and didn't go, which my kids are like, why didn't you go? And I'm like, because I wanted to stay close with my mom and grandma. Because that was my entire world. But led worship for 17 years. I still have fun and play. I think you're around at the house. But maybe one of these days I'll be a DJ because I can, I hear that stuff. That's it's all math. Like it all adds up. Let's just have fun.
Yeah.
But that's how it kind of all started.
That's wild.
And of course, you can imagine growing up in East Tennessee, being a piano guy in high school and in college, and also in the advanced chorale group and the advanced men's chorale group. I was picked on quite a bit.
Yeah. You're an easy target.
I made it really easy. Now I'm like, who's laughing now?
Yeah. I love it. Jim, that's an awesome story, man. Brother, I appreciate you jumping in here. I know you got your hands full and just absolutely out there killing it. So I can't thank you enough jumping in here and chopping it up. And man, I just I love the framework, and I love, trying to pull the best out of people, helping them accomplish what it is that they want to accomplish.
Yep, man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You got it, brother. We'll see you guys. Thanks.